it shouldn't be changed. Does anybody know what the NRA is? Anybody remember?
National Rifle Association.
There you go. Is anybody remember in here? Okay, well, the NRA stands for National Rifle Association, like he said, and their purpose is to provide safety and promote and encourage rifle shooting on a scientific basis. The NRA was formed in 1871 by William Church and George Wingate. Today, youth programs are still a cornerstone of the NRA, with more than 1 million youth participating in NRA, shooting sports events, and affiliated programs with groups such as 4-H, the Boy Scouts of America, and the American Legion, National High School Rodeo Association, and others. Sorry, that print's really bad. Recognized today as a major political force as America's foremost defender of the Second Amendment rights, the NRA has been the premier firearms education organizer in the world. But their successes would not be possible without the tireless efforts and countless hours of service that nearly 4 million members have given to champion the Second Amendment rights and support the NRA programs. Okay, a little bit more about the Second Amendment. It's primitive, it reduces the demand for a police state, as well as giving the constitutional right that the people are under control. When people are incapable of protecting themselves, they either become victims of the criminals or dependents of the free state. The citizens. Many non-criminal American citizens were surveyed and admitted to carrying a gun strictly for self-defense purposes only outside of the home. Those who are likely to commit violent felonies are much more likely than the average citizen to be willing to commit misdemeanors, such as carrying a concealed weapon without a permit. These are some of the effects of gun control. Tightening laws restricting the use and possession of firearms does not protect average law-abiding citizens. It only puts them at greater risk. Laws that place obstacles in the way of carrying concealed weapons are likely to cause greater reduction in the proportion of armed victims than the proportion of armed criminals. Enforcing licensing restrictions, trigger locks, and background checks makes it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to defend themselves, and as a result, encourages criminal activity. So if you make more laws about gun control, and if you just kind of make it a strict kind of path, then nobody's going to want to follow it because there's so many strict rules, and criminals are going to have to do even more to start doing criminal activity. Statistics. In 1993, the Gertz National Survey, an estimate of 2.5 million people obtained annual defensive gun uses, excluding military and police uses, as well as uses against animals. Gun users in 400,000 of these cases believe that guns certainly or almost certainly save a life. And this is a little chart of defensive uses of guns versus violent crimes committed with the offenders of guns. And that big blue space represents 81% of defensive gun uses versus 19% of violent crimes committed by offenders with guns. Okay. Now I'm going to go over my little brochure. Okay, this brochure is mainly about the history of guns and some laws in different states and just different stuff that's kind of cool to know. Okay, on the first page with this big red block, the title says, "Where does it come from?" The history of American weapons dates back to the Revolutionary War from 1775 to 1783. As well as recreational purposes such as hunting and gathering food, supporters of individual gun rights such as Stephen Holbrook place the history in an even more ancient context, arguing that the right to bear arms comes from the rights of freedmen under the English common law. And then we can go to the other side that says from the beginning. According to Holbrook, common law construction came to establish the right of freedmen to be armed, but before and after the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Early America. These laws were further enshrined in the 1689 Bill of Rights and through long-standing judicial construction. A relationship between shooting skills and survival among rural American men was in many cases a necessity for those encountering manhood in early America. states and their rights just around the United States. The first bullet says, 43 states provide for the right to bear arms in their constitutions, while 7 do not even have a constitutional provision for the right, and that is Minnesota, Maryland, California, Iowa, New Jersey, New York, and Wisconsin. The constitutions of Tennessee and Massachusetts limit the right to bear arms for the common good. 7 states' constitutions mention the right to bear arms to protect the family or home, and those are Colorado, Delaware, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, New Hampshire, and North Dakota. 5 states' constitutions reserve the right to use guns for recreational purposes, and that's Delaware, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, and North Dakota. 9 states give an authority to the lawmakers to pass gun control measures: Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, North and South Carolina, Texas, and Utah. And lastly, only a few states require the owner of a handgun or long gun to have an owner identification card, which would trace their firearms back, which is Arizona, Georgia, North Dakota, Washington, and Montana. And if you look over all the way to the right, in more than 35 cases, the Supreme Court has ruled that the Second Amendment refers to individual rights to gun ownership rather than states' rights. So the big debate right now is about whether it's an individual right to be able to carry a gun or states' rights for the government to be able to control whether you can and can't carry it as an individual. So, closure in time. As background checks became a more popular topic of another set to register for concealed weapons, it did not receive enough votes and failed. This background check proposal was called the Manchin-Toomey Amendment. 54 votes in favor and 46 agreements did not happen to reach the needed 60 vote threshold in order to move forward. After the amendment failed to pass, President Obama blasted Republicans for defeating the background check compromise, saying, quote unquote, the gun lobby and its allies willfully lied about the bill. That came from the Washington Post in New York. President Obama's comments set forth a community outrage.
I saw somewhere that if they ban guns, that there's the possibility that criminals using simple materials can make like fully automatic guns.
Do you think that's true? There's not a right or wrong answer, it's just your opinion. Yeah.
Does it make any sense that they would try with these gun laws? Because criminals are still going to get their hands on guns illegally or somehow. So what's the point in putting laws when the criminals are still going to figure out how to get their hands on guns?
Illegally, right?
Exactly.
Are there any more questions? Okay, well this is my little poster, and I presented this with my midterm speech a couple weeks ago, and it just states in the Second Amendment, I already went over that. Right here is a graph, and it says, this graph was asked those who personally own a gun, and the categories are for hunting, for target shooting, for protection against crime. For hunting, 58 said yes, and 41 said no. For target shooting, 66 said yes, and 34 said no. For protection against crime, 67 said yes, and 33 said no. The National Crime Victimization Survey implies that almost 100,000 offensive gun acts per year have taken place. And down here it states, if the criminal wanted to purchase a firearm and noticed that there were obstacles to go around, the criminal would most likely steal the firearm or find another way around it so they can illegally own it, which is what he was talking about. Are there any questions?